Good morning. The verse that I want to share that I thought was interesting in my devotions today that I'd like to share with everyone is found in Numbers chapter 16. Numbers chapter 16, where the chapter starts out with the story about Korah and uh, Dathan and Abiram, those three men who led a rebellion against Moses and against Aaron as well, basically claiming that all the children of Israel were just as saintly and holy and pure, sanctified as Moses and Aaron were, so they didn't agree with God that Moses and Aaron should be their leaders uh, before God. Of course, that's very dangerous ground to be treading upon, to decide that God is not right in his decision. In fact, that's blasphemy to claim that God is wrong. Um, but I thought it was very interesting the way Moses reacted in this whole situation. And he shows the spirit of a true leader in what he does. Reminds me of what I was actually talking with my dad about this morning already, and it reminds me of what he was preaching about last night. How a leader how a leader reacts to the way those under his authority treat him many times it seems contradictory, but it's not. And let me show you what I mean here. Not not Numbers chapter hang on. Yes, Numbers chapter 16. Numbers chapter 16, verse 15 is the first verse I want to look at. This is after Korah, Dathan, and Abiram have already refused to obey Moses' direct orders from God, in how they're going to resolve this situation of this dispute that Korah and Dathan and Abiram have against Moses. So they're going to take it before God, but Korah doesn't want to do it the way God said. So in verse 15, it shows Moses' reaction. And Moses was very wroth, and said unto the Lord, Respect not thou their offering. I have not taken one ass from them, neither have I hurt one of them. Ass being in the King James Version referring to a donkey or an animal like that. In verse 15, it's interesting what Moses' reaction is. He becomes angry with the people, and he basically tells God to not pay attention to their sacrifices, to not heed the offerings that the people would send him, because they were completely lying against Moses, claiming that he had done some wrong to them by taking something of theirs. Of course, God knew that it wasn't right, but Moses still defended himself before God, and that's not a bad thing. But anyway, it's interesting how Moses was angry with them in verse 15. But then, look down just a couple verses. Continuing on through the passage, it comes to verse 20. Yes, verse 20, where God is talking to the people of Israel. It says talking to Moses and Aaron, rather. And he's telling them what he's going to do with the people of Israel who have started this rebellion against him and against Moses and against Aaron. Verse 20, God says, or it says here, And the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, Separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. And they, being Moses and Aaron, and they fell upon their faces and said, O God, the God of the spirits and of all flesh, shall one man sin, and wilt thou be wroth with all the congregation? I think it's so interesting. And you see this at least one other time. You see this same reaction at least one other time in this same chapter, where after Korah and Dathan and Abiram have been dealt with, the children of Israel rebel yet again against Moses and Aaron, claiming that Moses and Aaron are destroying them in the wilderness. And God has to punish the children of Israel again for their rebellion. But Moses' reaction is that of a true leader. He recognizes the fault that the children of Israel have, and he is angry with them for what they're doing wrong against God, which is completely justified that he'd be angry with them for rebelling against God. But then when God says he's going to destroy the children of Israel completely, Moses says, no, God, don't destroy them. Don't do that. Not that God needed someone to tell him, no, that's not a good idea. But it's interesting what God is showing us here. A leader, a true leader, recognizes that those under his authority have faults, and yet he loves them enough to not want to see the worst happen to them. That's what Moses was doing here. Moses could see the fault that the people had. He was angry with them for their rebellion against God, but he did not want to see them destroyed. And that reveals to me how a true leader should react. My dad likes to say it like this: you want to kill them, but you can't kill them because you love them too much. And that's the way it has to be. A leader always feels this in almost every moment of his time as a leader. He will feel frustration with those under his authority enough to the point that he only wants to see them receive exactly what they deserve. But then he doesn't want them to receive exactly what they deserve, because he knows it would be very bad for them, and it's not really what he wants. So it seems like a contradiction, but anyone who is a leader for any amount of time knows what is being described here. And that's what I wanted to share with y'all today. A true leader recognizes the faults of those under his authority, and yet does not want to see them receive the worst, and many times what they deserve for what they're doing, because, well, he loves them enough to want to protect them to a certain extent.